start small. You can do it. We can choose who we want to be and what we want to do every single day. It might be hard. It might take a bit extra push until you get used to it, but you can do this. And on the other side are a whole host of lessons and another beautiful version of you that you get to meet because of the changes that you've made.
Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I'm your host, Jolene on the Go, solo female traveler and creative entrepreneur. Think of me as your skydive instructor, empowering you to take the leap into solo travel to push past your fears and transform your life. Join me every Tuesday as we explore the world of solo travel with purpose and discover how you can use it for your personal transformation, learn how to make meaningful connections around the world, and reignite your spirit of play. We aren't just talking about traveling to find ourselves anymore. We're all about doing the work to understand who we authentically are, breaking through our limiting beliefs, and taking the leaps to manifest lives we are excited about. Through interviews, solo episodes, and meditations, each episode is packed with practical tips, strategies, and inspiring stories from guests who have transformed their lives through solo travel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting out on your journey, the Travel Not to Escape podcast is here to inspire and empower you to solo travel with purpose. Strap on your helmet. We're about to jump headfirst into the journey of a lifetime. Are you ready? Let's go. Hey navigators, welcome back to another episode of Travel Not to Escape. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to ask, how do you feel about your friendship making skills? Because a big fear that comes up with solo travel is, how can I make friends in a new city? And not just small talk friends, but meaningful friendships filled with laughter and deep conversations. Friends that you stay connected with, even if you're in different cities. And a lot of the resources that are out there for connection aren't that easy to find. You can go down the route of doing multiple Google or Facebook searches, going to endless amounts of events, and still feeling pretty lonely and empty. So this is a reason why I created Passport to Connection. I've turned the process of making friendships anywhere in the world into a fun board game style membership where there are clear steps to this journey and resources for you to understand the how in making friendships, plus a supportive community to go on this journey with you. So if you want to find out more and how you can join, head to travelnottoescape.com/friends. See y'all there.
Welcome to this week's Travel Not to Escape episode. And today's actually a very special day. So it is April 23rd, the day I'm recording this episode, and the day I'm also dropping it for you all to listen, because it is my 1-year anniversary of not drinking alcohol. So I did a episode similar to this at the 6-month mark where I had some lessons that I shared with you all. So we're recapping now at the 1-year mark to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of giving up alcohol. And so I'll dive in a little bit into kind of what got me to this point and what lessons I gathered from this time frame and what it looks like moving forward in terms of my relationship with alcohol and changes that happened. And if you're interested in also trying out a sober, curious year, what things that came up for me that you might want to consider as well. So thank you for listening to this week's episode. As I mentioned, today is 1 year. So I gave up alcohol, and it wasn't like I wouldn't say it was I'm going to give up alcohol forever. And I don't think that that's really my story. But for me, it's more last year around this time, I was in Rio and I had a lot of alcohol then with my friend who I was traveling with at the time. And I just wasn't feeling great in my body. I was feeling not so confident, and I just didn't feel good in my physical, mental, emotional health. And it really became evident when I left Rio and went to Medellin, Colombia, and saw another friend. And as we were going out, realized like neither of us actually wanted to drink. So I said, okay, let me not drink while I'm in Medellin. Let me just try it out, give myself a little bit of a cleanse after Rio, which was quite needed. And then the more that I continued on to the cities, after Medellin, I went to Puerto Rico, but then that one was for a conference. And then I was back home in the US visiting friends. So the longer that I went, the easier it actually became. So 1 year later, we are here. So I think that you don't have to be an alcoholic in order to give up alcohol, and you don't have to give it up forever. But I think that having a year where you just try it out. We talk about play a lot in this podcast, but go through this in a playful and curious perspective and just to see, how do I feel by not drinking today and tomorrow, or what is the reason why you're even drinking in the first place? So start with a playful perspective, a curious perspective on just wanting to see what your body feels like if you don't drink, and take it day by day. So I think that's kind of the biggest lesson that I've pulled from this year of not drinking is it doesn't have to be a full vow of I'm never drinking ever again, but just try it day by day, see how you feel, see how your energy levels are, and make the decisions as they come. For me, as I started deciding not to drink alcohol, it became easier, and I started learning a lot of different things about myself as well. So I'll go through some of those major really came up. Okay, so I've laid out some questions to guide this podcast episode. So one of the things here is challenges that I faced in this first year and how I overcame them. I think initially in the beginning, the challenge was really not putting pressure on myself on how long I was going to last, and just, as I mentioned, being curious with it. And that made things a lot easier. The second was finding alternatives. How do you find things to hold on to? And so when you do go to an event that involves drinking, you don't feel like the odd one out and people don't ask you questions of why aren't you drinking. I think in the beginning, it's harder to continue to challenge why it is that you're not drinking. And so there's a lot more pressure that comes with, okay, let me grab a drink then. So I think if you come in with a strategy and research ahead of time, if you're going to go to a restaurant or an event, what are the drink options, and is there anything tasty that you can order, a mocktail? And if you don't have any drink options that are available on menus, you can look online ahead of time. Then when you get there, you can take a look and see. You can also do some research online and check what alcohol-free options there are that are easily available in any bar. So you can always get a soda water and lime, for example, if all else fails. And in some cases, that is actually what I got. But in the beginning, it's very helpful to just ease your way in and not make it a huge thing. Just be curious and find alternatives as a strategy so that it's not as big of a thing in the beginning until you get used to not drinking. And I think that once you get used to not drinking, that's when you can share, oh, okay, I'm not drinking for this month or this whatever time frame. But I think in the beginning, if the people around you are questioning it or you have a fear of people around you questioning it, I try to downplay it. And really, that happens because your choices make other people reflect on their choices. And so people are naturally curious, and then they also start to go inward and think, oh, if she's not drinking, what does that say about me? So there were some situations where that happened with people that I didn't quite know as well. So just know that may happen in your case as well. So come up with some strategies so it's not as big of a thing in the beginning until you get used to it. And then you can start to, once you get a handle on it, people start to answer them more clearly. But until you understand where you come from first, I think it's harder to really have that strong foundation to stick with it. Okay, so the next question here is positive changes that I experienced in my life in this year of being sober curious. So I would say a lot of positive changes. I think the biggest one is the fact that I'm so much more comfortable in my body. And it's not as if I made a major change in my body. The only thing I changed was really cutting out alcohol. And I think that by doing so and then having to go to events and really work up my confidence without that dependency factor, without the alcohol being as my crutch, it really pushed me to be more confident inherently. And I think that that's something that I'm going to take with me, regardless of whether I choose to drink in the future, is the fact that I can dance and not have to drink alcohol. I can come up to random people and feel very confident in doing so. And even in a drunk, crowded room, I can hold my own in conversation and meeting new people. So those are skills that I developed over this last year that I'm very grateful I did, because now I don't have limitations in, oh, I need a certain number of drinks in order to feel comfortable. I can go somewhere immediately and feel comfortable. So it did take a while to kind of get to that point, but I think that was kind of around the 1 or 2 month point where things just clicked for me. So definitely one of the most positive experiences that I've had in this sober curious year. Okay, and next one is any resources or support systems that helped me along the way. Really, this is, I think, once I got a handle of, okay, yeah, I want to do this for a good amount of time and just really test how far I can go with being sober curious. My friends were all really supportive, and you have to test this out with your community too. I know in some cases it's not the most supportive community, but for mine, a lot of my friends were also going sober curious and cutting out alcohol. And as I was opening up to them about what I was doing, they were there with me sharing mocktail recipes and different bars that served really cool mocktails. So I think that, yeah, get a gauge on the people that you're surrounding yourself with. It's a great way to connect with them as well on maybe some shared goals if you're both wanting to cut out or cut down alcohol usage. And other resources, besides my support system, other resources that I may have opened up were, as I mentioned, researching ahead of time in terms of events, menus, communities that leaned in a little bit more into mocktails, being sober curious, and surrounding myself with people that were understanding in that. So, in regards to travel, I have a question here about whether travel has changed for me since becoming alcohol free. And I think it's kind of become aligned anyway to my slow travel change. So I went from traveling a lot very frequently and just packing my bag and going and doing so very fast to really spending 3 to 6 months in each place, building community, balancing it with work, balancing it with health. And so I was already making those changes to my travel style. And I think cutting out alcohol for this year was in complete alignment with that, because it allowed me to have really good clarity in other areas of my life by not going out and drinking. And by not going out and drinking, it doesn't mean that I didn't go out in general. I think that was one of the things I mentioned earlier, was in the confidence building. The more that I went out without alcohol, the more confident I was in doing so. And so I was able to have a really great balance of both, of being able to go out and have fun and hang out with friends, but being able to get my stuff done as well. And I wake up the next morning feeling refreshed and excited and motivated to explore the city or to get work done. So I think that that's been a really great balance for me this year, where my mind is just really clear and distraction free. Okay, next question is, are there new destinations or activities that I am more interested in now? So the reason I really dived into being sober curious is because I also have been using myself as a guinea pig for how to make meaningful connections without alcohol. I had this idea a year ago of, okay, I know how to make meaningful connections as I'm traveling, but can I do it without alcohol, which is one of the more typical ways people connect, through meetups that involve alcohol, happy hours, going out and drinking and dancing. So I really wanted to use myself as a guinea pig in this case and actually test out what are the ways that you can make friends without alcohol, without relying on this. And I came up with this concept of relying on play as a foundation for these connections instead of alcohol. And that's actually what I teach now at the community that I'm building for Passport to Connection under Travel Not to Escape, is all about how to make meaningful friendships without alcohol. Being sober curious for this last year has pushed me to be more activity heavy and really getting down into activities that light me up and things that I want to do with people and know how to find those people doing those activities. This has opened up a whole another world, a richer world of so many different more methods of making meaningful connections and other activities that light me up. And now I have the time and the energy and the clarity to do so. So definitely in terms of specific activities, leaning more into salsa and bachata dancing, really diving into art and also my business. This year has been a really big business building year for me. So I have a lot more energy and clarity to do those things now than I did before when I would be spending a lot more time or a lot more nights and mornings out and about. There's a new destinations. I think in the world's really my oyster. So there's no specific destinations that opened up for me. I think that I have become more confident regardless of where I go. I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable regardless of whether or not alcohol is involved. Okay, next question is sharing any travel experiences that were particularly meaningful while sober. So there's two things that come to my mind. There is Colombia, where I first started this Sober Curious adventure. And we started it because my friend and I were there and we weren't really feeling super social when we were in Medellin. And we were looking at astrocartography and looking at our lines on our birth chart and how that tracked with the locations in the world. And we both saw for our charts that Medellin was on the line of Saturn for me, which was basically telling me it was more of a go inward type of location. So it directed me to go to a ashram. And so I looked on the map, and on the line of Saturn, I actually found 5 hours east of Medellin in the jungle, an ashram that was doing a silence meditation retreat. So we ended up booking that, and that was a really great retreat that we went to. And that was one that I was completely sober in, and you usually have to be sober in, there's no alcohol there. But I remember starting and I did an ecstatic dance class while I was there. And that one was really great because before I'd associated dancing with drinking. And here we were all dancing just to the beat of the drums, to the animal type of movements. And that got me so much more comfortable in moving my body and being sober. So that one definitely sticks out in my mind. And I'm going to contrast that with my trip back to the Philippines in July of last year for my birthday, where I had met some people, and the Philippines is a big drinking country, to be honest. But I had met some new friends in the Philippines in Bonifacio Global City, and a lot of them were really drinking heavy. So I think that also pushed me a little because I stayed sober through going out dancing with them while they were drinking. And I just remembered for me, I didn't feel like drinking. And so I stuck with that. And I remember a few people consistently questioning me on that choice. As I mentioned, your choice in not to drink sometimes becomes a reflection for other people to look inward, and they don't love that. So that was another contrasting experience for me in regards to travel and drinking. But then I went to Bali afterwards, and that was also a really great experience because in Bali, there's less temptation to drink as well. There's so many different drink options that are healthy and delicious that you don't even really think about it. And a lot of the activities in Bali involve spiritual healing or outdoor activities. So there's less temptation there in general for drinking. So those are just a few of my travel experiences in terms of alcohol. But the longer I traveled and the longer I did so without drinking, the easier it actually got. So I think the first 6 months when I did this podcast recap, that I had a lot more lessons versus the rest of the year because it almost became my default and I didn't have to think about it as hard as I did the first 6 months. Offer tips for listeners who might be considering going alcohol free. So as I mentioned, just start off curious. Start off with one day at a time. And this is a advice that I think a lot of my other guests give in terms of travel. How can you take the big leap? Well, it starts with the small steps. So same thing with going sober curious. Just start one day at a time, one drink at a time, and assess how you feel because ultimately this is how we feel and being intentional about your choices. So if you feel like, hey, I really want a drink because it's delicious, because it will enhance whatever I'm doing in a positive way, then yeah, go for the drink. But if you are relying on it because you need an escape or a crutch or a boost of confidence, then I would question or have you question what alternates there are to whatever emotion or reasoning you have for drinking. I think there are always alternate paths besides drinking. So if it's not to enhance the experience or because you just genuinely find it delicious, then yeah, start to go a level deeper and ask yourself those questions so that you can have a little bit more of self-reflective time, self-discovery time, and grow from the experience. Okay, destinations known for wellness and healthy living that could appeal to sober travelers. Okay, well, as I mentioned, Bali, so easy to not drink. And if you are wanting to make a healthy lifestyle change and you are able in the place you are now to change environments, the environment is going to be your biggest factor in success, because if everyone around you is drinking constantly, it's going to be so much harder to be the odd one out all the time. But if you are in a place, an environment, city, friend group where it's acceptable, where people aren't really drinking as much, there's alternative options, the default is healthy, delicious mocktails, then yeah, it's going to be so much easier to make those decisions. So find those destinations. Bali is definitely one of them. And yeah, I think that you can find a healthy environment regardless of where you are in the world, but it all comes down to intention. And yeah, with that, I will end with just an empowering message to remind you all that whatever you are thinking, whatever change you want to make in your life, whether that is solo traveling for the first time or being sober curious and testing out not drinking alcohol for a week, a month, a year. Start small. You can do it. We can choose who we want to be and what we want to do every single day. It might be hard. It might take a bit extra push until you get used to it, but you can do this. And on the other side are a whole host of lessons and another beautiful version of you that you get to meet because of the changes that you've made. So thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It's short and sweet, and maybe if you are considering being sober curious, trying it out for a little bit, just feel free to message me. You can message me on Instagram at Jillian on the Go or Travel Not to Escape. Either one, I'm here to listen. And if you need someone cheering you on the sidelines in your journey, I'm happy to be that as well, because I know that in the beginning it could be a little bit daunting. So however I can help, just let me know. Here for you all, and you got this. See you all on the next adventure.
All right, everyone, that's all we have time for today. But before you jet set off to your next adventure, I want to remind you about Passport to Connection. This is an incredible platform that's going to be your one-stop shop for finding meaningful connections in any city that you explore. Search for communities, apps, groups, resources that perfectly match your vibe, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. Head over to travelnotsescape.com/friends and sign up for Passport to Connection today. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode, and happy travels. Until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and playing, and safe travels, navigators.